As women, society often tells us that once we chose a path, we're stuck on it, that we can't pivot, evolve, or reinvent ourselves. But our guest today is living proof that reinvention is not only possible, but it can happen at any age, and that's powerful. From thriving in a fast paced world of TV newsrooms as an Emmy winning journalist to becoming a trusted coach and communication expert for entrepreneurs, executives, and women going into their next chapter. She embodies what it takes to embrace change with confidence and grace. This is, in her words, Working Conversations by Women. I'm your host, Thando Mazibuko, and welcome, Jane Hanson. Hi, Jane.
Thank
How are you?
Hi, thank you so very much for having me. I love your words and I love what you have to say and I love what you're doing because I think this is so important for women of any age, no matter if you're 20, 30, 60, 70, whatever.
Thank you so much for joining us, and we appreciate your presence today. You have such an inspiring career, and you have shifted from TV journalism to helping others find their voice. Can you share what prompted you to get into this change and how you got there?
Well, I grew up in a very small town in rural Minnesota. And I don't know how many people in your audience have ever heard of the show called Little House on the Prairie, but it was, something that during our childhoods here, it was a very popular show about a family that lived kind of in the middle of the prairie. And that's very close to where I grew up. And so I was not surrounded by, we had to go 2.5 hours to the nearest city. And so growing up there, I really, really wanted to be able to see the world. And so I chose journalism as a career that would allow me to do that. And I ended up in New York City working for NBC for the NBC networks at Rockefeller Plaza. If you've heard of Rockefeller Center in New York, that's where I worked every day. It was pretty magical and pretty wonderful. And it was a great job. I saw the world. I've been to South Africa. I've been all over. Some of it reporting and some of it not, just because I think travel really, quenches our curiosity and helps us grow and learn about the rest of the world. And I truly believe if we all traveled, we might not have as many problems or discontent or misunderstandings as we do. At any rate, so I had this amazing job. I was a reporter, a newscaster. For a while, I had a show of my own that took me everywhere. And the premise of the show was if you can connect someplace to New York, you can go to it and do a show on it. Well, tell me someplace you can't connect to New York City. We have people in New York from all over the world. Every week, I don't even know how many languages are spoken in New York, like 160 languages or something. And we have, the United Nations, we have everything. So I ended up, one of my favorite trips was going to the Gobi Desert of Mongolia on a dinosaur dig with the paleontologists from the American Museum of Natural History. And so there we are digging for dinosaurs in 110 plus degrees heat and having a wonderful experience. So my life as a journalist and as a newscaster and reporter was truly, truly wonderful. But I got to a stage in my life where, for a long time, I did the early morning news. I got up at 3:20 a.m. every day, well, Monday through Friday, and I went to bed very early at night. And when my daughter turned about 12, I thought, this kid is staying up later than I am. This could be trouble. So, but I also was tired of the deadlines. I was tired of the hours. I was tired of the constant pressure. And I had a unique opportunity and decided finally, after a while, to take it. And when I say unique opportunity, I just felt like I was in a position where I was ready to leap into something else. I'm sure there are people who are listening to this or watching it that are thinking, there is something else I might like to do. There are certain things that are not making me totally happy. And what are they and how do I figure that out? And so I decided that I would take, actually, the real truth is I had an aha moment when I was sitting in the studio one day. I was interviewing somebody and they came in to talk. I think it was about the launch of a new book they'd written, but they started to say a couple of things during the interview that I found fascinating. So I kept talking about those, and then the interview was over. And when the person walked out of the studio, they said, I didn't get to talk about what I wanted to talk about. And a light bulb went off in my head because I realized then that I knew how to help people not only do great interviews, but how to present themselves better, how to tell their stories in a way that really resonated so that they didn't get caught off guard or go down a wrong track, but they got to tell exactly what they wanted to say. And that's how I became a coach.
Wow. That's such a fascinating transition in history into your story. What were some of the challenges from moving from journalism into now coaching for you now that you've decided you are going into this transition?
Well, I think the challenge is, well, first of all, it's always a challenge to do something you don't know.
Mm.
Now, when I say that, I know about the how to get people, how to coach people. I know how to, I know what I want to accomplish with them, but how to create that as a business was a very big challenge. How are you going to get clients? How are you going to make money? Where are you going to do this from? What do you need? Who do you need to hire to help you? Do you need to hire people at first? Because obviously, when you go into something like that, you either have to make some sort of an investment, be it an investment of money or a huge investment of your sweat equity or your time, etc. And so it's a lot of work just to figure out how am I going to do this? And you stumble a few times. I also was known for being, a newscaster and a show host. I wasn't known for being a coach. So I now had to convince people that I had these other qualifications. And that they branded me they put me in one place, right? And I think this is a really big issue for your listeners because we sometimes become our jobs and we don't think of ourselves without that title or without what we do in that job. And then that means that other people only view us as that. So we really need to create our own brand inside the job we have today for what we want to do tomorrow. If that makes sense.
Perfect sense. You do speak about reinvention being about who you are or how you communicate rather, and not what you do, which you touched on just now.
Mhm.
What, why is that distinction important, do you think?
I think it's important because so many of us, particularly women, we really believe that we are what we do. But I want you to think about that clearly because what we do isn't just our work, a job. We're also so multifaceted. We are, like many of us, are mothers or wives or partners. And maybe we've got something we do outside of work that's really super cool or fun. Like maybe it's some kind of an athleticism, or maybe it's um, some craft or something that we do. So we are not just our job. We are all these things. And we have to bring all of that into us. And I think this branding yourself as yourself versus branding yourself as your job becomes important because my ID for very long had been Jane Hanson, NBC, but I was no longer that NBC, that corporate part. So if you want to change it up, you have to be able to identify yourself as something other than the job you had and the place you worked. Does that make sense?
That makes so much sense. And what do you think is the pivot to make that mindset shift? Because a lot of people are stuck in that, from people who just left school to people in their careers. How do they make the mindset shift to getting to that?
I'm so happy you used that word mindset. That's what it's all about. We get stuck in ourselves and we get stuck in thinking that we're just capable of doing one thing as a job without recognizing that we're capable of doing so much more. And so I think we have to train our brains. And I like to do exercises with people. Um, and the exercise that I like to do is it's twofold. A, make a list, answer a whole bunch of questions like, what do you really like to do? What's your passion? What are you good at? What's your core competency? How much time are you willing to spend? There's a whole series of questions that really help you identify the great things about you. Because maybe you're a person who's truly organized. Well, that's a very good talent if you want to strike out and do something else. Etc. So I mean, it really drilled down into it. Then on the other side of the piece of paper, you put things you don't like. Like, I hate deadlines, or I dislike a long commute, or I don't want to be in a place where I don't have flexibility. I mean, whatever it is, make those two lists and then take a look at them and say, okay, here's because you're going to be surprised at what it shows. You'll be surprised at what you really like versus what you really don't. And I want you to be truly candid with yourself, truly, truly honest.
I'm going to do
Then, yeah, which is sometimes hard to do because we think we're one way, but then another little trick is to go to your pick five people.
that.
Maybe it's your one of your parents, a best friend, a coworker, a new acquaintance, and maybe somebody you've done business with. Ask them to give you a description of you. Maybe just it can be two words, it can be a phrase, it can be whatever. But what they say to you may shock you in a good way, not a bad way, in a good way. And what I mean by that is they may say, you're one of the hardest working and most determined people I've ever met. And you're thinking to yourself, really?
Mhm.
I didn't know that I didn't realize that I had that determination. But what helps you become successful in a new job? Determination. But so now, because we perceive ourselves 30% less than the rest of the world perceives us.
Yeah.
So find out what those things are that people truly see in you. And it uplifts you, it gives you some confidence, and it helps you learn a little bit more about who and what you are, and maybe what you really want.
That's so true. I did that a few years ago. I asked a few of my friends about what they think about me, and I was really shocked. Surprisingly shocked, but it was a really beautiful thing is that the people close to you see you in a way that you probably didn't see yourself. And I think
Mhm.
that's a great exercise. And I will be doing the other side of, what I actually want to do and what I don't like to do, because I think it's important. Can you please let us know about what are some of the impactful or stories that you have with people you've worked with that have, you know, been an impact to you as well for women who found their voices or any entrepreneurs? Can you please share a bit of that?
Well, I have a lot of them. What I'm particularly amazed by is women who are CEOs or run a company, and they tell me that when they walk into a boardroom that, and mind you, they are great leaders. They walk into a boardroom that might have no other women on the board, and they feel like they're back in kindergarten, and they start to they start, the heart starts to palpitate, and they get very anxious, and they feel like they don't belong there. They have this imposter syndrome all of a sudden, which is complete baloney. But how do they deal with that? And so we talk about things like really great prep work, knowing what you want to say, about how you walk into the room, about how you take your space, and about how you need to, you understand that this is a board that chose you for that job. So just go in there and show them how well you're doing. So it's really, again, getting into your own head. Now, I'm going to tell you I learned a lot of lessons. I'm actually kind of writing a book about this right now because I'm on this whole subject of reinvention. Um, I learned a lot from people that I interviewed over the years in my television world. One of them was Desmond Tutu.
Mhm.
Now, I'm sure, being from South Africa, you know that name pretty well. So I'm sitting in a park in Lower Manhattan, and I'm interviewing him as he's about to speak to the United Nations. And in the middle of the interviewer, and mind you, as reporters, and you're always in a hurry. I'm like, oh, do we have to stop? I'm almost done, right? And they said, oh, yes, you want us to stop. So they pulled him aside and they told him that he'd won the Nobel Peace Prize. And he came back and sat down with me, and he had tears in his eyes, and he started to talk about what this meant, not for him, but for all the people that had been working so hard and so long for the good, for a better life in South Africa and in Africa. And I began to cry. And his humility and his humbleness in that moment. And I knew I was in the presence of somebody pretty cool. And I thought, wow, this person is so humble in this moment that I don't even know how to respond to that other than to say, we need to be sure that we always keep humility and humbleness about us. So that was pretty amazing. Um, Today, in my world today, I spend a lot of time at conferences that are mostly all women. I mean, I work with a lot of men too, don't get me wrong. But when I work with women, what I find is that we sometimes don't, we sometimes don't understand that we're our own worst enemy because we don't believe enough in ourselves, or because maybe we think, I referred to imposter syndrome a little bit ago. We don't think maybe we're the right person, or maybe we're not the expert, or maybe we're not, um, I don't know, we're just not good enough. I interviewed last week at a conference a woman named Lachey Ward, who she's a Black woman. She worked for Target in the United States, big company here. Have you heard of it?
We know Target
Yeah,
from
I was gonna
social
say.
media. We know Target.
So Lachey's just
You
written a
guys
book.
love Target. Yes.
Well, the company's headquartered in Minnesota, which is where I'm from. And in
Oh,
Minnesota, we thought it was so cool, we called it Target.
yes, I've heard that as well, Target.
Anyway, Lachey has just written this book, and it's called Lead Like You Mean It. And in the book, she talks about all kinds of things that we don't even think about. And she talked, one of my favorite stories that she told was she'd always kept her hair quite short and, looking very professional. But when she took vacations, she would get long braids put in. And so anyway, when she got back from vacation once, she didn't have time to go take them out. So she went to work with braids in her hair. And it turned into, people, all of a sudden people started saying, why are you wearing those braids? Are you leaving? Are you doing this because you're leaving? I mean, it turned into rumors that she was quitting her job and all this stuff. And she's like, what? And then she kind of got irritated and thought, if I want to wear braids, I'm going to wear braids, right? So anyway, this conversation went around and around and around and around over her hair, over her hair. And so one day she's couldn't take it any longer, and she walked into the CEO's office and she said, "I'm keeping my hair just like this." And he goes, "Okay." And that was it. And she's kept it that way ever since. But her point about telling this story is that up until that moment, she'd thought that she had to fit in by having this short haircut and keeping herself, very much looking just, she had a certain stereotype she thought she needed to be. But the moment she was wearing the braids, it gave her a lot more freedom to be who she really was. So I want you to think about being free to be you.
That's powerful. And
It is a,
that's a
it
lot
is a,
of
yeah,
thinking and oh, with being a black woman, hair playing a big part as well. That's a big thing.
it is. It is. But and so when you talk about lead like you mean it, which is the title of her book, it really, I mean, she was, I mean, when she just retired last year. And she's young, by the way. She's ready for the next chapter of her life. She's, I think, 58 or 59 or something. Um, but the whole point of leading like you mean it is to bring yourself, your true self, to whatever job you have and whatever job you want to have. And we sometimes don't do that because we believe we have to act a certain way.
Yeah,
But why should we?
that's true.
Right?
Yeah. And then that comes into your science about first impressions and how you are perceived. So can you please speak about how you coach people through about their first impressions, the
Well,
science of
that's all,
impressions?
you bet. That's all about body language and body language. So people make an impression, they get in their head something about you within 0.01 seconds of you walking in a door or of meeting you. hmm And it's really hard to get rid of that first impression. Takes a long time. How are they making it? It's usually before you've opened your mouth. But it's about how do you walk into a room? Do you walk into a room with strong, good posture? Or are you a little slumped over and a little tentative?
Mhm.
Do you hold your hand out to shake somebody's hand? Or do you wait for them to be first? Do you come well prepared? Or are you, a little not perplexed, but not completely ready? So, and how do you look? You need, do a little homework about if it's somebody's office that you're walking into or somebody's whatever it is, somebody's home, wherever you're meeting this person, maybe it's a meeting off site or a restaurant or a park or wherever it is. Are you dressed appropriately? And so do a little research about the company or about the people or about who it is. What do they look like? How do they act? Because you want to match them. So just really think about what you're presenting with your body. Now, body language even comes through on a Zoom.
I was thinking, is she looking at my body language right now? What how am I sitting?
Sitting pretty good, but you do want to sit. You don't want to slump over. You don't want to be looking everywhere. You want to look at the camera. You want, and you want to present yourself in a nice way. I know women. I did another event recently and we talked about clothing and attire because that can be confusing for women because you'll get things like business casual. Oh, okay, what's business casual? Does that mean I can not wear high heels or does that mean I can wear, my jeans or what does it mean? Because it's all confusing, all these words. So, um, but on a Zoom, only the top part of it shows. However, I know women that when I was at this thing a couple of weeks ago, we had this whole discussion about many of those women told me that they dress from head to toe, including putting shoes on before they get down on a Zoom. Why? because it makes them feel like they're being more present, that they're being more in an office situation or in an in-person place. So they put their shoes on. Now, I'm gonna tell you, I don't have my shoes on right now. Do you?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I have a pair of Crocs on.
So, during COVID, I had this pair of cutoffs, cutoff jeans.
Hmm.
Yeah, they were all holy and ripped and all this kind of stuff. They were really old, and I wore them every single day. And when COVID was over, I thought, I'm going to bronze those things. Because I thought that, because they were like my good luck charm. And then I thought, that is really stupid. So I threw them out because they were
Yeah.
unwearable. They were so worn out at that point. Uh, So on a Zoom, I want you to think about always being really present, not multitasking, shut everything else down, put your phone far away from you. Um, don't have any other things open on the laptop. Really think about what am I doing so that I'm fully present in this moment. But that's the same thing you need to do also when you're meeting people, like when you go to a networking thing, for example. How many times have you been to a networking event where you just get introduced to somebody, say hi, how you doing, and they're constantly looking over your shoulder. They're probably looking for somebody, but what's going through your head is, oh, am I not good enough to talk to? Have I not made enough of an impression on you? Don't do that to somebody. And then be a really good listener. Active listening, which means not thinking, what am I going to say next? But I don't want to jump in. Don't jump in, but really listen and say, and ask questions like, tell me more about that. Or how did that make you feel? Or that job sounds so interesting. What's your daily routine like? Or just something that will display to them your interest. Because I'm going to tell you, it's like that Maya Angelou quote. People will forget what you said. They'll forget what you did. They will never forget how you made them feel. Right?
Jane, thank you for joining us today. We are running out of time and I don't want to keep you. What would be your closing words to our listeners, and what do you hope, for yourself as well about, and we can't wait for a book. You're coming back when you're done with the book. I'm ready for the book. So what
Okay.
would you tell our listeners as you close?
I would say, I guess, three key things. Number one, please believe in yourself. Believe that you have in your soul and in your heart, you can do anything you want to do. You just need to get your mind set. One of my favorite people in the whole world is my now deceased aunt, who told me whenever I complained about anything, change your attitude, change your life. The second thing is, every aspect of your life can be a wonderful adventure, no matter how old you are. Whether you're 10 years old, 20 years old, 30 years old, 40 years old, however old you are, there is a next chapter. And that next chapter is valuable and rich. It's full of experiences. And the third thing is, be curious, because the most unusual things can happen when you're curious about another human being, when you're curious about something that's happening out there, when you're curious, you will find and meet the most amazing people, and it too can change your life.
That's true. And thank you for joining us today. And thank you for your time. And thank you for your words of wisdom. You've poured into me, you've poured into our audience, I know for sure. And I hope that, you have a great career in this new shift of your career as well.
Thank you so much. It was lovely to meet you.
It was lovely to meet you too.